Welcome to another episode of Design in Progress. Today we are going to be doing our designer interview with Ned, who is the designer for Rex Regnat. We tested
Yes.
that several weeks ago now. At this point,
Yep.
the test went a little long that night, so usually I do those
Mhm.
interviews right afterwards. But it's
Beautiful.
great to have you back on.
Thank you.
I had a lot of fun on the test.
Well, no, I
Ironically,
mean,
we
yeah,
we had some dissenting opinions, which happens sometimes.
yeah,
So we had a call it a tumultuous playtest with dissenting opinions.
but that's important. That's important for getting better, and I think that they had a lot of really valid points, and it's something that I've struggled with as far as designing games is, and this game in particular is making sure that people feel like they have control. And I'm maybe jumping ahead a little bit,
No, it's okay.
but
We can
I
just
think
kind of
I
jump
think
right
it's
in
really
usually.
important. Yeah, no, it's really important to take that kind of feedback into account because a lot of times when a game is pretty good, but it's not quite like all the way polished up yet, there's going to be plays of the game, experiences that people have that are negative. And the goal of like polishing and trying to get the game across that finish line is sanding down those times when people are having a negative experience and ensuring that whenever somebody just picks up the game, they're able to kind of jump into it and they're able to have a good time.
Right. And I feel like
Yeah.
there's two kind of important things kind of nestled. One of
Yeah.
which is not every game is going to be for every person. Like
No.
you have to be cognizant when you're designing a game that not everyone likes every single game. We've had a
No.
couple people test Dungeons of Goldrune who are just like, well, what if you change this and this and this and this? And that's not the game we're
Right.
designing. So
Hmm.
yeah, those are valid criticisms if I wanted to design that sort of game, but I'm designing this sort of game and
Right.
don't really apply here. The other thing is that, and you kind of alluded to this, but I feel like I struggle to say easy. It's relatively easy to
Yeah.
get a game or design to wherever,
Hmm.
90 to 95%.
Right.
That all usually comes together pretty, and it's that last 5%. That's the real just the worst part because that's
Yes.
the all that little balancing of stuff, and you're like, well, it could work one of 8 ways. I could fix
Hmm.
this, and now I have to test all of them. And probably
Yeah.
need like 2 or 3 tests of each of those changes to see, okay, what actually works the best. And there's no way to shortcut that. And
No.
it's just
No.
it's the my l- at the same time my least favorite and my most favorite part of the designing because it's so arduous, but it's
Yes.
also where you get some of this really good feedback where you're just like, never ever would have thought of that, and that perfectly
Yeah.
makes sense.
To use like an analogy, there's a technique in data science and in computer science called gradient ascent, and it's basically you're trying to figure out where, if you imagine like there's some topography, some like sheet that has peaks on it.
Right,
And when you're designing a game, you're trying to get to the highest peak for your game.
right.
And so early on, it's very easy to find which ways are uphill, where you like it's very clear which directions are going to move you farther up the hill. But
Hmm.
as you get closer and closer to the top of the hill, the more the feedback is going to be like moving around.
Yeah, just kind
And
of circuitous.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's tough. It's and I mean, to the point that you said about getting things to the 95% level, I think that one of the big challenges as a designer is knowing when a game is at the 95% level, whether like squeezing that extra 5% out of it is going to give you a game in the end that is going to be successful or not.
Right,
And
or
so,
or not even
yeah,
that, but is going to make a market difference because your
yes.
game at 95% might have a big enough audience that it will be successful, and that extra 5% might get you another 5% of audience. But if you're just like, okay, well, I've already
Yes.
got enough audience to make this successful. I read
Right.
a very interesting article, and now I need to go back and find it because
Hmm.
I want to be able to link it and talk about it and give credit to where credit is due.
Right.
But it was one of the designers, maybe Stonemeyer linked it or something like that. But
Yeah.
who basically said it doesn't matter if your first and your second and your fifth game are crap. Just publish them. Just go. Like just put
Yeah.
first edition on it and get it out the door as fast as
Yeah.
possible so that you can just keep iterating. Because at some point, yeah, the people who like your game will find it and the people who don't
Mhm.
will not. And that's not to say you don't do any play testing or anything, but
No.
um
And it's also very easy for, like, if it is Jeremy Stackmeyer, like, that's very easy for him to say because
right.
he yeah. I'd say that, for people who are in the kind of trenches of things rather than, like, just publish the game, be willing to say, "This game is done. I might not ever be able to get this published." So, I designed, a game before Rex Regnat that got very, very far along called, Too Greedy and Too Deep, that was a worker placement game about dwarves, where the kind of conceit of it was that you were sort of co-opetitively building a mine
Mhm.
together with these guilds, and the kind of twist on the worker placement was that your workers, um, rather than picking them all up, they were at the guild that they were at, and then the next year they could only move to an adjacent guild.
Hmm.
So there was this sort of like long-term spatial planning element to it, and I got it, reasonably far along. I made, box prototypes, and it felt fine, but it never felt like really great. And
Right.
I think that, yeah. And if I spent a lot more time on like optimizing some elements or the others, I might be able to get it out the door. But I don't know. At least for me, I was starting at around that time on Rex Regnat, and it just felt like Rex Regnat started off really rough,
Mhm.
but I the like the payoff, the juice felt really there. And not to toot my own horn, but like where Rex Regnat is finishing along, and the next design that I'm working on, Hench, I think has like it's faster, it's shorter, and that's kind of been the direction that things have been going. And I guess that goes back to what you said about playtesting is when you're playtesting like a heavier, a mid to heavyweight game. When you're making those tweaks, it can be really hard because like the time to playtest is long, and even if you like do like horizontal or vertical slices of the gameplay
Right.
where you're just trying to test this one change, a lot of times there's so many interconnected systems that you can't effectively do testing at the like 30 to 45-minute test round. You need to,
Right.
yeah,
Right, you need 2 hours. I mean, that's the problem that
yeah,
I'm running into for, like, Dungeons of like it's
yes,
like a 3-4 hour game if you play through the whole thing, and it's just
yes,
like,
yes.
but it is funny because I had kind of a similar experience where I'd already started working on Dungeons. I had a couple other games, like my space game that I was working on, and
Mhm.
then I had this kind of, like, stroke of vision that led to on next, and it just, like,
Yeah,
within, like, less than a month, the game went from not existing to being basically prototyped and playable, and
yeah,
has not changed a huge amount since. Like, numbers of things have changed, but the actual
mhm,
core, like, concept behind the game just, like, really hasn't changed. Oh, okay, it's
yeah,
like sometimes it's just a thing that we're going to work, and you "Oh, okay,
yeah.
this is what I'm working on now."
I mean, yeah, no, that I mean, and that's part of why board gaming is like a creative, artistic medium. In a lot of, well, at least designing, I think of it that way. Is that it's really hard to know when you're going into it what is going to work and what is going to not. There is a book that I really enjoy called The Wheelwright's Workshop, that talks about. It was written by somebody who was interviewing a wheelwright, a person who made wheels, right around the time that industrialization really started in Britain. And the thing that's really interesting is how much of the craft of wheel writing was developed by like these long, slow experimentation, and that idea of a craft as something that is hard to look at from the outside and understand what is going to work and what is not going to work. I think applies a lot to designing board games. Is that uh, it is hard to look at something and know whether or not it's going to work or not. And a lot of it is going to come down to a lot of very kind of micro scale decisions, if that makes sense. Like,
Right, and a lot of it,
yeah,
ends up as much as, I would like for things to which I
yeah,
know you're very much a numbers guy.
I am a numbers guy.
Sometimes it's just like, I don't know, this feels better at 9 copies of than copies of, like,
Yeah,
or 8 versus 9. You're like, mathematically, it's not that big of a difference, but better. So we're gonna go with
yeah,
9,
yeah,
and sometimes it's just gut and playing it
yeah.
over and over and over again, being like, "Good work," but it's not.
Yeah, just scrap it. Yeah, scrap it, change it, modify it. And I think that to go back to that point about playtesters, I think that playtesters are really good at identifying where things, in general, the people who are using a product are really good at identifying what isn't working. They're much less good at identifying fixes. And
Yes,
that's
yes,
like one of the challenges of playtesting.
I have
Yeah.
said this many a time.
Yeah.
Playtesters are great at finding horrible at finding solutions.
Yeah. And that's because they're looking at the game from like the perspective that they're looking at the game from is different than the person who is making the game. And it's easy to say like, oh, just change this thing. And sometimes playtesters do have really excellent ideas. I've had
Oh yeah,
playtesters
yeah,
who
of
have had
course, yeah.
like, yeah, brilliant ideas. But a lot of the game and a lot of the design process is seeing like, is there a way that I can make a change, like not necessarily at the point of friction, but even before the point of friction,
Right,
that
right.
makes that friction point not happen, rather than trying to smooth out the point of friction. Just like, don't do that. Don't get in that position.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, because oftentimes they're seeing just that point of friction and you're seeing
Right.
what that point of friction is connected to. You like we as the
Yes.
designer are like we see the whole thing and you're like, "Yeah, I could
Hmm.
change that and that would work better for that." But it would break this other system that just spent 2 months fixing, you know?
And that I
Um
really like,
Yeah, and that I
and
really like. So
yeah.
it's like I could make that change, or I could make a different change to this other system that will impact this system, and it'll all work out fine, and we'll get the same
Yeah.
result.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get to my questions. My first question is, what on like an average Saturday afternoon, you're hanging out with your friends. What tends to be your go-to grab it board game? Gonna play this. Have some buddies over, drink some beers. This is what we're doing.
That's a really good question. So I'm a parent, and so I don't have a lot of like just buddies coming over to my house and we end up playing a game. There's a lot of like scheduling, like fill out the tally cal, and then
Yeah,
I'm the organizer, so it's like, okay, all right, this Saturday looks like it's gonna work, and then Mike or whatever. Oh nope, sorry, my son has a baseball game, and it's like,
right.
I get it, man, I get
Understood.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thankfully in
Um.
the age where my kids are small enough that they don't have extracurriculars on the weekend usually. So it's like, okay, for the next
mm.
2 hours, you guys are gonna watch a movie and we're gonna play a board game. And then we'll all hang out together. I promise. Okay.
I would say that the game that I have gotten to the table most regularly as like a kind of, we weren't planning on it, but we ended up just doing it. I'm thinking through what, because recently the answer has been that I pull out Hench, because that's like, it's 30 minutes, it's 3 to 5 players. That's normally pretty good. But I think that I have gotten a lot of play out of the estates. That's been one that's really done well. Oh, in that sort of auction space, High Society, Reiner Knizia's High Society has
Okay.
been one that I just pull out, and Skull has been another one. I like games where there's a lot of like bluffing and interaction and negotiation, and auctions are a form of bidding, I suppose, of
Yeah.
interaction.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are games I'll have to.
The High Society is great. It's small box game that you have one deck of cards and you're
Mhm.
trying to have a good time.
You just
That's
go.
that's the
Yeah.
point of the game.
That's
Yeah.
the some of the hardest things is like, okay, how can I take this design idea and it down into the smallest form factor possible?
Yes.
So often like I've started to now, as like starting to prototype a game, actually go
Mhm.
and start filling out forms. In a couple manufacturers have, I just fill out this form and we'll
Yes.
give you like a rough estimate. Um,
Yes.
I've started to do that because I did that
You
for
got to.
I did it for Dungeons and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this is gonna be like $130 game. I need to make changes. This is not gonna
Yeah.
work. Like,
I mean, I think that that's one of the biggest parts of experience is that you're more familiar with like standard form factors. Like when you're designing for the first time, you're like, how big should my board be? What components do I have? And some people kind of steer into the 3D printing space, and they have like these really, I don't know. I don't want to say crazy ideas, but they have like this beautiful vision for the game.
right,
And for me, as I've gone along, the number one thing is, I have a printer that I use for my prototypes. These are their standard sizes for everything. I'm going to use their standard size components. Like,
right,
not to name other printers, but um, I have been using the tool for a certain other printer that's based outside of the United States, and they have their standard sizes. And can you get things in the standard sizes? And there's a whole bunch of like knockoffs of that. So
hmm
like number of cards, right? Like the printer that I use does 18 card sheets, the other
Right.
printer does 54 card sheets. So if you can make your game like a multiple of 18 or a multiple of 54 cards, it makes everybody's life easier.
Right, and it's like
Yeah.
they're gonna print that sheet one way or another, so if you have
Yes.
55 cards in your game, you're gonna pay for an extra sheet, and you're like, "Okay, do you
Yes.
really need
Do
cut
you
a
really
card?"
need that extra card?
Right,
Do you really?
right, I'm doing that
Or
right now
another,
because
yeah. Yeah.
Dungeons has, like, multiple cards, it's like a deck building game, and I'm like, "How
Yes.
many do I need 10 copies of this card, or would 9 do? Maybe 8
I
would
think
do."
nine, nine,
And
nine.
then it,
Yep.
like, multiplies throughout because there's 6 of each of them, so you're like, "Okay,
Yes.
that's actually," if I
Yes.
drop 2 cards, it's actually, like, 24 cards left. Okay, yeah, or, 2 cards
Yeah, and
here,
that
2
cuts
cards
you a
there.
whole print sheet, and that's
Adds
like, yeah, and that's like a
very
whole
quickly.
dollar off of the. It's amazing. And another example is like tokens, right?
Mhm.
Like if everybody likes nice tokens, but can you make it out of cardboard? Can really? You have
Right.
to use wood for this component? Some
Right,
things you
right.
do, some things you
Everyone
do,
loves
right?
a
But
nice
yeah,
wooden meeple, but then it comes time to
yeah,
actually pay for the wooden meeple and the harder.
yeah. Maybe the cardboard's okay. Maybe the
Maybe we just
cardboard's
make it out
okay.
of
Yeah.
chipboard, it's fine. Oh my
Yeah.
so
No, it's brutal.
yeah, so my next question is
Yeah.
what actually, I'm actually going to, fess up, I cannot remember what your actual job title is. You've told me so many times. In the
It's
real
fine.
world.
I am a data scientist for a health insurance company.
Mhm.
I'm since because we live after November 2024, I'm going to leave off names and identifying information,
Yes.
but
Names have been
I am not.
changed.
Yeah, yes, I am not on the for those of you who are itching, I'm on the provider side, so I talk to
I
doctors.
just yeah, just
Doctors are the people
doctors.
I work with, not patients. I have
Right,
nothing to do with patients.
right. And you're just a numbers guy in the background talking
I'm
to
just a numbers
doctors.
guy.
That's it.
Yep, yep.
So
I do contract. I help contract negotiations.
right. So
Yeah.
how did you transition from that into designing board games?
Gosh. I have been designing board games since in one form or another since high school. So like in high school, I think everybody does this where they like write their own RPG system.
Mhm.
Um,
Right, or
and
do a
then
yeah.
Yeah, and
There's
then in college, I made like a collectible card game based on like the clubs that I hung out with, where you were trying to like get the biggest squad, and I based the cards on people, and it was a good time. And then I kind of took a break for a while. I played a lot more board games, and I learned a lot, and I think that that's one of the things. Like as a designer, people talk about life experience and like the breadth of things that you have experienced, and the more stuff you have done in your life in general, I feel like it helps to inform your design sensibilities. So
mhm.
I played a lot of games. I didn't design a lot of games, but then I kind of got the bug. I'd say back in 2019, and then I kind of really started jumping in much more two-footedly during the pandemic, unsurprisingly, because I had
Yes.
time on my hands. Yeah,
Yes. I
yeah,
feel like so many people were like, "Well, I got nothing to do. I could design a board game."
yep. So that that's been kind of my journey there, and I would say that the things from my job that I have leveraged the most is less about the math, although the math is a big part, but and we'll see later, but it's a lot more about like automation and tooling,
Mhm,
which is gross, but it makes like um Nandeck, for example,
mhm.
being able to just like the first time I laid out a game, I did it all in GIMP actually,
Right.
and that was miserable. Like having to every time I
Oh,
wanted
yeah.
to change the template, having to edit 200 individual cards,
Yeah.
I went absolutely out of my mind.
Mhm.
And so, leverage Nandeck, learn what other automating tools you can take advantage of.
Right.
I have
I've been
scripts
using,
now that
I've been
yeah,
using Dextrous because it's an
yeah,
online thing, so I can do it on my phone, I can
yeah,
do it wherever, and it takes
yeah.
care of everything for me, and I just go
Beautiful. Yeah.
export to
Yep.
TTS, and it makes a file, and
Yep.
I'm done. It's like,
Yes.
great.
No, that's chef's kiss.
Right, so good.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, like you use tools. Don't like it's really easy to get in the kind of like I call it the death march mindset
Mm,
where you just are trying to do this one thing. Like you could stop and start over and use things more efficiently, but you're just trying to do the
Right, it's
next thing
the
at
it's
each
the
step.
the sunk
Yeah,
cost fallacy. Like, well, I've
exactly,
got
right.
this far using just Photoshop. I'm sure it'll be fine here.
Yeah,
And that's been
yeah.
my actually my kind of this year my challenge because
Mhm.
up to this point I did almost everything in GIMP. It's just a
Yeah.
Photoshop. And starting in like January or so, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do everything in vector based. So I again went
Yeah.
and I downloaded Inkscape, which is a free Adobe Illustrator basically.
Mhm.
And if I can't, if it's like just like a player board, like I don't have like 800 variations of a player board. I've got like
Nope.
four. So, like, okay, I'm doing it all in that because I'm like, this will be the highest resolution, whatever resolution I want. This can be, and this is how like
Yes.
if I'm going to consider myself a professional, this is what professionals are using Adobe
Yeah.
Illustrator. So
Yep.
if I'm gonna send files to somebody, they should be in the proper form,
Yep.
and look good, and then you start using it, and you're like, oh yeah, this is way easy. It's like
It's
line
it's
stuff
it's
up and
easier.
spaces stuff for
Yeah.
me, and shit, this is really
Yeah. Yeah. No, like, there's a reason the tools exist, and it's not just, like, gatekeeping, right?
right.
Like, there yeah.
Oh, well, it's just like a slightly different way of doing it. You're like, no, it's like a
Yeah.
tool designed specifically for what you're doing. Like,
Yes.
you wouldn't use like some people do. You wouldn't use Photoshop to make a brochure for something. You'd be, that'd be ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
Microsoft Word is not made for that. It's meant for writing papers.
No.
That's the thing.
Yes.
Although I, I once this mini side story. I once had a coworker who refused to learn and use Microsoft Word because he had learned Corel at an early age
Oh, wow.
and
Okay.
knew all of the keyboard shortcuts, and they were totally different from Microsoft Word. And he was like, "Look,
Of course.
I could spend 2 or 3 days or a week or 2 or a month learning that, or I could just keep doing this. It will look exactly the same and it will get done faster. I'm just gonna keep doing this." It's like, "Hey, man, just on using
Yep.
Corel. Go for it, man."
I mean, in the programming world, there are still the people, although they're getting fewer and fewer, who just, like, learned using Vim or Emacs and, like,
Right.
doing everything that way. It's wild.
And they're like, "Gonna brute
Yeah.
force it. I'm just gonna write."
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Alright. You do you.
So, getting back to Rex Regnat.
So I designed a game. I have a bunch. Something that's going to keep coming up is like I have designed a bunch of games in the past,
Hmm?
and most of them aren't good. And so I said, okay, you have gotten to the point that you have gotten to, and I thank you for your service, but you're going back in the closet now.
Right.
And when I get another idea, I will pull you out and I will see if I can make you pretty.
What we can
But
use from you. What we can
right,
just
exactly.
dredge
Can
off
can
of your
can
dead body.
yeah. So I had the first like serious game that I designed was called a Crystal Ship that was about politics on a generation ship.
Mhm.
And the idea was that you were trying to like steer the course of the like the future colony that you're going to be founding by like negotiations and debates and political stuff.
That sounds
Uh,
interesting. Let's play that.
it was good. It was also 3 hours. It was not 3 it was the kind of situation where you had, like, an hour and a half of fun over 3 hours of game,
Yeah, you're
and
like,
so
"Ooh,
yeah. Ugh. Yeah,
I'm gonna go get
so
some chips. I'll be right back." It's like
yep,
and you come back and like,
yep,
"Has anything changed?" "No, nothing's changed." "Okay, cool. I'm gonna go
yep.
have a smoke and I'm gonna have" it's like I've
So,
played those games.
but I like that game,
Mhm.
obviously because I designed it, but, I liked it, but, it was not working, so I put it on the shelf, and then I started working on the dwarf game, and then when I was working on the dwarf game, I had an idea that, "Okay, I've learned a lot of stuff, maybe I can reapproach Crystal Ship in a way that's smaller." So I said, "Okay, let's try and make this as small as possible." And what's something that I learned, I think, from Too Greedy and Too Deep was if you can leverage existing mechanics, it makes your life easier because there's been like a lot of work done and people understand that you're not having to like explain everything from scratch exactly how it works.
100%.
So
We
yeah.
can come back to that
So
later.
like yeah, too greedy and too deep was worker placement. I'm like, okay, let's try and do a politics and negotiation game where we're going to use trick taking as the basis for the debate. It
Mm,
has kind of like a frisson where like everybody's arguing, one person wins the argument, and I had this idea to start off by You wanted to make sure that everybody got something out of the discussion. Like you might not,
Right.
and I think that's one of the big hooks. But I was initially trying to theme it in like a Canticle for Leibowitz style post apocalypse United States.
Right. Right.
But
Right.
I found that it was really difficult to make issues not seem generic,
Right.
and
I
not to make
feel like if
everything
you're going
seem
to do
really
that,
generic.
it's either going to
Yeah,
be really generic or it's going to be like hyper politicized today, where you're like,
yeah.
ah, yes, this is something we can all relate to. The actual political climate that we're living with right now.
Now, yeah. And so I was when I find for myself it helps a lot when you're designing something to not think about things in like a very general terms, but to think about things very specifically. So like
Mm,
I wanted to go through and I was doing some research on okay, are there European parliamentary systems or big European political debates that happen and everybody gravitates towards like the French Revolution or
right.
like
Right.
the debates that happened during the Victorian slash Edwardian period in the United Kingdom. Um, but I also felt like there's people have a lot of baggage coming into that, and I found about the Polish Constitution of 1791. I'm like, wow, this is really interesting.
You're like, wait
And
a
the
second,
more,
this is
yeah,
perfect.
yeah, this is perfect, right? And the more I read about it, the more so I like came into it with the kind of skeleton of the design, but then seeing like the way that the debates played out. Was really interesting, and it suggested the mechanic that ended up being the outrage mechanic.
Hmm.
Was this idea of historically what happened, spoiler alert for something that's over 200 years old,
Right.
but uh, Poland got partitioned by Russia they passed this new like modern constitution, but the rich landholders, the aristocracy were not happy with it, and they're sufficiently unhappy that they invited Russia to come in to restore the constitution, and it ended up that Russia, came in and didn't leave.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so and I felt like that mechanically is something that I like a lot. I like it's like a recurring feature of a lot of my designs is if people can't agree or if like one person is being cut out, then there is a tendency then like them having kind of a Samson option where they can make things awful for everybody until you let them play.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah,
It's
and
like,
I
all
feel
right, well, if you screw
yeah,
me over, I'm gonna make everybody. Maybe this is gonna be everybody's
miserable.
problem.
Right. And that has this kind of interesting feedback. If you think about like it in terms of positive versus negative feedback, it means that if one person is getting far enough ahead, it incentivizes them to try and win less.
Right.
Because the more they're winning, the more everybody is incentivized to just like break things and get
Right.
mad.
Make things
Um,
go horribly, horribly wrong for them.
wrong
Right.
for everybody. And I think that a game that kind of inspired a lot of that is Churchill by GMT, that is like a World War II game where you're negotiating the peace conferences.
Hmm.
And there's some DNA of that in Rex Regnat, but it's a very different game. But one of the things that's really interesting about it is the victory conditions. Is if there's the everybody loses victory condition. If you don't beat both Axis powers, then everybody loses. But then there's these like gradations of victory where if everybody is close in score, then the highest score wins. But if somebody is doing well but not better than the sum of the other two powers, then the other two powers like do a gang up win.
Coalition. Yeah.
A coalition, right? Like, so if one player is running away with the game, but they're not running away with the game enough, then they actually don't win. That the
Hmm.
other powers win. Um, and like Lunar Punk, I think this was implemented not well. I think that like Lunar Punk games and some other folks have been experimenting a lot more and been doing a lot more work about more interesting and better feeling like multi-victor kinds of games.
Right.
But that core idea I think is really juicy and has a lot of meat on the bones.
Right, and it has it
Yeah.
it's interesting too because it leads into, a lot of people here, very familiar with Root, that there's this kind of
Yes.
king-making aspect of Root where you're
Yeah.
like, "Okay, well, I'm not gonna win, but I know one of you 2 is going to win.
Right.
So, I can help one of you, or I can hurt the other one, or I can hurt both of you, and how are we gonna do that?" And that's where, some of the negotiation comes in, but adding kind of that variable level of maybe there's one victor, maybe there's two. You know,
Yeah.
if everyone's kind of tight, then it's this person, but if it's really kind of far, then it's actually these two people. But then if it's even farther,
Mhm.
then it actually is that first person. And
Right.
it's an interesting way to kind of break that down and go, okay, there's actually
Yeah.
cues here. You know, there's
Yeah.
variation. You know, there's a spectrum of winning, basically.
Yeah, and I think that that's king making is a problem, and I think that like root is both good and bad in
Mhm.
root the way that that king making dynamic works, where it can be interesting, but it can also be just like a spoiler aspect. And I think you see that in a lot of games where there's like aggressive politicking. I think diplomacy being maybe the example of
Right,
that.
right.
But I think that there's been a lot of modern developments in like multi-victor. I am going to use the term technology, like it's obviously not like a machine that got
The
built, but like
technology. We
under,
have the technology.
understandings of
Yeah.
games, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
understandings of how to make games so that you can make situations in which there's not just one winner, or where like the king making is it's channeled into a way that feels good for everybody, as opposed to the king making being purely like spiteful and vindictive, if
Right,
that makes sense.
or not
Yeah,
even just spiteful and vindictive, or just the part where you're just like, I literally just know I'm not going to. So
yeah,
I have a choice. I know one of you two is going to win, and whoever I back is probably going to. And you're like,
right.
I guess that's fun, maybe, kind of, but like
Well,
I'm just
yeah,
helping make sure that person A wins as opposed to me. But
right.
and
But
that's fine in like a 30-minute game or an hour and a half game. When the game starts to
yes,
become like a 2 hour, 2.5, 3 hour game, it just like
that's no good.
it's like, okay, well, I just wasted 2 hours. That was fun, guys. Okay,
Right.
see you again next week. You know,
Yeah, and I would also say that Root does actually fix this with the Vagabond, what the Coalition Victory,
coalition.
right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, where the Vagabond can join with the weakest player, and so
Right,
like if it looks like you're not going to win, then you can have this two-player victory, and so like the seeds of that are there in Root. And
right.
I'm not going to trash talk Root because Root's a great game, but I
No,
think that
and
for a lot of people, yeah,
that worked really
yeah,
well in the base game. When
yes.
there was just 4 factions. Now that there's
Right.
13 factions, it's a little different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have
No,
tournament play, and you're like, okay, well now we have
yeah.
2 people who won this one, so how are we gonna do that tournament? It's like,
Yeah, no.
it's more trouble than it's worth.
Tournament play incentives are very interesting. Like, I used back in college, I played diplomacy
Mm,
online a fair bit. You know,
as you
but
do in college, yes.
as one does. But part of that is that the core game of diplomacy generally doesn't generate a victor, right? Like it's
Mm,
very rare that you have somebody actually win a game of diplomacy.
right, it's like
Much more
Monopoly.
often,
Everyone
right.
just
I
quits.
mean, yeah. Yeah, no, at a certain point, generally, it's like people quit. And so much of like the way that I'm going to use the term modern diplomacy is played revolves around the idea of like the tournament scoring, and the tournament scoring being the secondary set of rules that helps to make the game end in a reasonable amount of time. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's like the people who I just the people who play TI tournaments, Twilight Imperium
Oh
tournaments,
boy.
where
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
like 10, 12-hour games, and I'm just like, "Oh
That's
my gosh,
brutal.
guys."
I have played TI. It's a good time. It's not 14 hours of a good time.
Right, right. You're like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I would just rather play 7 games of Root or, you know,
Yes.
5
Yeah.
games of Arcs or,
Something
or
else.
12 other games that are all a half hour
Yes.
long. You know, it's just like there's
Yes.
so many other things we could be doing.
Yeah. No.
That's one of the inspirations for the space game that I'm. What if TI and Root together in like the same time frame? Because
Yeah.
like the ideas behind TI, very cool. Everyone likes that
Yeah.
idea. Oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
move stuff around, spaceships, battle, take the plant,
Yeah.
and then you have to sit down and learn. This game's gonna take.
Yeah. And
Never
it's
mind.
there's so much just like dead time. Where people are taking their not again, I'm not going to slag TI.
No, no, no.
People love TI. It's good. Like it definitely scratches a very particular kind of an itch. And to your point about like, can you take that core, like can you find a way to take like the amount of fun that you're having from TI and fit it into a smaller box?
Right, yeah,
Right.
that's the thing is like, okay, let's like think through the game, and I'm planning on
Yes.
doing a video. actually kind of about the axes of game design
Yeah.
of strategy versus luck and all of that. And part of that is
Mhm.
like probably have inspiration. What is the fun
Mhm.
in this game I want to replicate in my game? And yeah, part of it's just going like, how many hours of fun are in that 12 hour? We
Yeah.
make a game that's just those, you know, like
Yes.
if it's 2 hours of fun, let's have a 2 hour game.
Yeah.
Does just that, which is the trick. It's hard.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of like cutoffs. I mean, this is maybe going a little deep into meta commentary,
Mhm.
but I think that like if you can get your game to run in under an hour, if you can get your game to run in under an hour and a half, or if you can get your game to run in under 2 hours, those are like the break points for
Right.
how much extra work do you have to do to get people willing to play it, to like get publishers and people invested.
Right. How
Um,
interesting
yeah,
and honestly, and it's gonna be different for a lot of like how
sure.
interesting is it or how replayable.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna if I play your game and it's a 2 hour long game and I'm like, hey, I have like figured out this. Hey, like two
Hmm.
I'm kind of done.
Hmm.
You know, you have to learn all of these systems and this and that and what's the strategy and all that. And then if you figure it out and
Yeah.
you're like, you know, you can replay it dozens and dozens and dozens of times. Okay, it's worth the effort of me going and learning these systems and figuring all this out
Yes.
so that I can. Man, we are just really going off on the table.
Just ripping
Great, just
ripping through these
ripping
questions at a breakneck
the
pace as
breakneck
we talk about the importance of being like succinct and
yes.
making sure that you're fitting the correct amount of information in the correct
Direct
size.
amount of
Yeah.
fun in the
Yeah.
interview is 40
Yep.
minutes in. Um,
Boy.
which is what has been the change that you had to
The very first draft of the game, I had fixed hands. So basically, like everybody had 13 cards that were assigned to them, and you like what cards you ended up drawing. So you were gonna have like 8 of the 13 cards for each trick, but like you had a fixed set of like everybody had a king, and there was like this distribution table and this whole thing about it.
right, kind of
Um,
like a almost like a deck
yeah,
builder, but everyone had their own deck
yeah.
that you started with.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. You know, and the problem was that there was like zero replayability.
Right, you
Like,
like you
you
played
know,
it 2 or
there
3 times and you're
yeah.
like, "Okay, cool.
Yeah.
This is the
Yeah.
problem. This is how you solve it. Done."
Yep, yep. I know I can win these tricks and
Mhm.
not win these tricks. Like I'm guaranteed to be able to win like so many tricks. And in reality, like with the much freer aspect of it, you still are probably only winning like 2 or 3 tricks. But like which 2 or 3 tricks in which card, that's a much more interesting decision than saying like, okay, well, I'm gonna win this trick and not
Right,
win
I
this trick.
always know that I have the
Yeah,
jack of hearts, so I know I can win the
right.
whatever one that the jack of hearts is in, and
Yeah,
I can yeah, I mean,
yeah,
you can, like, play the whole
yeah.
game in your head almost at that point in time, and it's
Yes.
like, "Okay, then
Right.
why am I playing it again?" Yeah.
Yeah. So that was one really big change, and I think the other really big change was the change to the outrage track, and I think that this had like a huge impact on game quality. Is that
Mhm.
initially the outrage, rather than having an outrage track, I had like a pile of tokens, and whenever you outraged in a particular suit, you would grab one of the tokens off, and it might be a reward or it might be something bad, or not something bad. It might be like points, or it might be a move, or it might be
Right,
I had like a set collection mechanism where you were trying to collect like support from various foreign powers that you got by outraging. But it was just way too like people. The value of an outrage was extremely variable then,
right,
and with the track you there's this whole sub game that develops where I want to outrage first, or I want to complain first, or I want to complain second, and because I'm complaining first or because I'm complaining second, I get this bonus and I can plan around that.
right, or I
Right,
get
and
a
I can
bigger
make
bonus if I do it first
right,
versus second, I'll get the
right,
smaller one, but maybe
right,
the
right,
smaller one's more important to me right now because of what I'm trying to
exactly,
do, and
right,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
having eyes on what the actual prizes are in this state,
yeah.
makes for the actual strategy
So yeah, those are that's the answer.
to be what is your favorite part of it, but
Mhm.
what is the part of the design that you were most tickled by? That you were like, "Oh yeah, that was clever. I did it. I like that. That was good."
I would say the thing that I like most is that everybody gets something. Like
Mm,
whenever there's a trick, everybody gets. It might not be the thing that you want, but you are guaranteed to get something out of the trick.
right,
And I think having that really means that I've played a lot of trick takers in my time, and for a lot of trick takers, at a certain point, you just you're not winning any other trick, and so it's very easy to just like I'm not invested.
Right, you're like,
or
"All right,
like, I know I'm not
let's
winning
just
this
play through these
particular
last
trick.
5 hands." Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah, You lay out
you
the
you
cards, it's
win.
fine. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but because everybody always gets something, it means that even if you are not in a position where you think you can win a lot of tricks,
Mhm.
you maybe only be able to win one. You may be only able to win the trick with your king, right?
Right,
All the rest of your cards are just absolute garbage.
right,
You still have a reasonable chance at being able to accomplish something and move the ball forward by like clever play.
right.
Um,
Right, and
yeah,
the
and I like that.
difficulty
Yeah.
for you there in that design space is going, "Okay, I need all of the things that people are going to get to be variable amounts of
Yes.
but good enough that people are happy that they've gotten something, but not so
Yeah.
good that there's no point in
Exactly. Yeah. I was talking I do mentorship through Unpub, and I was talking to my mentee about this the other evening is when you want to, like, games are a succession of interesting decisions, and generally what makes an interesting decision is you want that the payouts be different, and you want that the value of a payout to not be immediately calculable,
Mhm.
right? And is in the case of Rex Regnat, is winning the trick worth spending your good card to try and win the trick with, or would you just be happy with like a crummier thing,
Right,
right?
where you could save it
Or
for later. Or the thing that
right,
I find also really interesting, and the best example for this is Magic the Gathering, but, I
yeah,
try and put it into some of my designs as much as I can. It's sometimes tricky, which is
hmm,
the downside that's actually an upside.
yes,
Where, okay, if you're playing this way or this way or this way, yeah, this is just literally bad to do
hmm,
XYZ thing. But if you took this skill or you're playing this card or you're trying to go for this sort of victory, it's actually
then
really, really good for you to do that
right,
thing, you know? Then that's one of the
yeah,
things I really like about your game where like you could just be like, you know what? I could just go for the revolution victory
yeah,
points here. And actually that might make me win. So I actually
yeah.
kind of want to start losing as much as I possibly can here. And it's fine.
Yes, can I strategically lose? Can I make my like theoretically good cards turn into complaints rather
Right.
than being effectual? Yeah,
Right. Right.
yeah.
And that's it's one of the trickiest things in it.
Yes, I would absolutely agree with that.
I've started doing that in dungeons a little bit now where I'm like, okay, not actually using all of the resources that I have here. I have not had
Mhm.
anybody lose life. I should do that. That's like a
Yeah,
classic Magic the Gathering thing where like, ooh, look at
yeah,
this. I can draw how many cards? It only costs as long as I don't die, it doesn't matter what the
yeah,
number
it's great,
is. It's
yeah, the only
fine.
point of life that matters is the last point. Come on,
Exactly.
baby, let me spend some life to draw some cards.
Right, so I was like, I can add
Yeah,
this. I can add some hits here and there, and people, oh,
mhm,
I can do an extra couple bits of damage if I take twice as much as that extra. And then people are having to think,
yeah,
and
yeah, it's great.
so I love that sort of distance. The last question I have is,
Oh,
you've
no.
already started talking about it a little bit.
Mhm.
What is your next project?
I have two. So the typical kind of the Ned calendar of design is, at least nowadays, is I'll have a game that I'm finishing or getting to a finished point,
Mhm.
and the kind of culminating event is in the winter, the Cardboard Edison and the Ion Awards, and then after that, it's just like sanding and polishing and trying to get things kind of out the door and pitched. And if people bite,
Right.
great. If people don't, they don't. So the next one in the hopper is Hench, which is a 3 to 6 player co-op competitive game of Saturday morning cartoon minions. You've played it; it's good. It
It's
takes
so
30 minutes.
fun.
It's a good time. Yep. Uh,
Yeah, we actually
it's not historical.
have to have you
Yeah,
come on and play that on Planet Project.
I'm excited too. It'll be a good time. So that's the one that I'm currently kind of like getting ready, and I'm doing all the like record the pitch videos for, and make the sell sheets, and actually write the blessed rule book for.
Right.
And then the kind of next thing out on the horizon is I'm trying to rework a game that I had. Again, you have the relics in the closet to pull out. I'm trying to rework Minneapolis, which is a game about a post-electric Minnesota where you are competing noble houses, and I'm trying to see if I can like ride the wave of the multi-victor stuff that Lunar Punk has been doing, and
Right.
get that into a good place.
And
Yeah.
as you brought this up the other day,
Yeah.
post-electric as in there is no longer electricity, not post-electric as in
Yes.
after we found electricity.
Yes. Yeah. No, no, no. There is no longer electricity.
Right.
Yes.
It is X electricity.
X electric. Yes. Maybe that's better. X electric. Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, that's all my questions. Do you have anything that you'd like to plug? Twitter, Blue Sky, YouTube,
Yeah.
podcasts?
I am Nomad Auto on Blue Sky. So look me up, follow me if you're interested. It's a good time. I also do a podcast about the Star Wars Unlimited collectible card game called The Force Unlimited. Um, and it's a good time. You get to see a lot of math there. And I recommend that give us listens if you're at all interested in that space.
Awesome. So we are gonna take a break right now, and
Yes.
this will be this video. If you're interested in ed and math, there'll be another video in a couple days that will get posted. That will be a discussion about that. And so come back,
Beautiful.
watch that. Thank you for watching this, and until next time, bye.